Right now, though, we're going to check in with Michele Hanisee, president of the Los Angeles Association of Deputy District Attorneys, to talk about some crime issues that the governor has gotten involved in. Michele, welcome to the program. Good morning. So, a little background. Prop 47, Prop 57, folks have been talking about. These are initiatives passed by Californians in recent years. One of them said, well, we're going to release some folks early. Another one said, well, we're going to downgrade some felonies to misdemeanors and so on. Very controversial. Crime seems to be rising in the Golden State faster than the rest of the country, and some people say that these propositions are to blame. And now the new development is there's an initiative that would fix one of the propositions, but the governor doesn't like this new initiative, and he's actually gone to court. So what's your take on all this?
And is impermissible, or that the voters don't have the authority to change the law that they've previously enacted under other ballot initiatives. His argument is you needed more signatures for this. That's what his argument is. Now, when the Secretary of State or the Department of Justice tell the proponent of a ballot initiative how many signatures they need to collect, that's the time to challenge that number, not after the proponents have relied on that number and the deadline has come and gone to gather more signatures. But that's what the governor's doing.
Yeah, it does seem kind of fishy. I guess the other practical question, I don't know if you know this election law twist here, but let's assume for the moment that the governor's right, that they didn't verify, they don't have enough signatures. And I mean, we're talking 2020, the ballot. Isn't there still time to go back out and say, okay, we'll find some more signatures? You want your signatures? I got them right here. Or is it still too late even to fix things to qualify for the 2020 ballot, which is still a year and a half or more off?
The situation has never occurred. So no court has ever made a decision on this issue. But in the normal signature gathering process, you have a limited time frame in which to gather signatures. And when the deadline comes and gone, and it's gone, you're done. That's it. You can't just gather signatures indefinitely forever. And it's a Herculean effort and costs a great deal of money, an enormous amount of volunteer time to gather the amount of signatures you need in this very limited time frame that's just a couple of months.
Yeah.
So as far as we know, it's over. It's done. And the proponents would have to take up the ballot initiative in another year and qualify it for another year down the road, which seems inherently unfair since they met the burden that they were told they had to meet.
Well, let's talk about the initiative that the governor does not want to reach the ballot in 2020. In what way would it try to apply some fixes to either Prop 57 or Prop 47, the initiatives that talked about early release and also downgrading some felonies to misdemeanors?
The two key things that it would address in those areas is, one, we keep talking about violent felonies versus nonviolent felonies. In Proposition 57, the governor said, would only grant early release for nonviolent felons. Well, it was pointed out to him again and again that he never defined who that was, and the default was going to be only those people not already defined as violent under a very limited existing law that applied to something else altogether. And that it was going to apply to sex offenders, and that it was going to apply to some third strikers. And he says, no, it won't. We will write the regulations so it does not apply to those people. But it was immediately challenged in court, and now the sex offenders are getting early release. The third strikers are getting early release. And if you look who's actually just being released by the Department of Corrections, they're releasing people who've committed horrible, violent assaults. And that's not what was represented to the public. So the public's entitled to fix this if they want to. That's how it's addressed Prop 57. Prop 47 reduced a lot of theft to misdemeanors, even if the person had multiple prior convictions. And the other thing this ballot initiative would do is say if someone has 2 or more prior convictions for a petty theft, a third arrest can be a felony case, not a misdemeanor case. And the important thing that does is it gives back the police their powers of arrest in these cases. Because right now they have very, very limited ability to arrest a shoplifter unless the shoplifting was actually committed in their presence.
We're talking with Michele Hanisee, president of the LA County Association of Deputy District Attorneys. It does seem like there's been a real disinformation campaign. I mean, I can't imagine that the voting public in California would have gone along with this notion of cutting some thefts down to misdemeanors if they'd realized that people with lots and lots of serious prior crimes on their records if those people could be beneficiaries of this. It seems like at every step, the public really has been, there have been efforts to prevent the public from really knowing the full effect of both of these propositions.
Oh, absolutely. And the proponents always put the word safety in the name of the initiative, Public Safety in Schools Act, and it's very deceptive. And then the Secretary of State and the Department of Justice, who essentially work for the governor, write what goes into the ballot description. So that's what the public is told. And I've always said that if the public really knew the truth, they would not have voted for these things. But there is a campaign of disinformation out there.
So let's go back to the basics in terms of what really was behind passing Propositions 47 and 57. I understand that some people believe that early release is appropriate in many cases for various reasons, and they sincerely believe that some crimes should be downgraded to misdemeanors. The punishment should fit the crime. That's important. To the extent some people feel that there's institutional racism in the criminal justice system, maybe there's a reason for reforming it in some way. So whether it's because of racism or truly excessive penalties, I can see how that would be a legitimate basis for reform. But my recollection is that a pretty strong motivation for letting people out early and changing the system and moving prisoners from state prisons to county jails, which would facilitate and ease the process of early release, a big reason was we were broke. We didn't have any money. We spent money on so much stupid stuff in California that federal court lawsuits were filed and federal judges looked at the state incarceration system and said, whoa, this is inhumane. You got guys stacked up 6 high in bunk beds, and you either fix it or you start releasing it. Now, is it your recollection that that was one of the reasons that we started moving toward this trend of, let's have early release and let's downgrade the felonies to misdemeanors because we just didn't have any money left?
Well, there's what motivated the governor versus what motivated the voters, and I think that clearly motivated the governor and the state. We were under a federal court order to reduce overcrowding in the state prisons. There was 2 ways to do that. 1, you could build more prisons, or 2, you could take those people out of the prisons and put them elsewhere, either back on the street or transfer those individuals to county jails, which was impractical because the county jails were never designed to hold long-term prisoners. But it was also a cost-shifting thing, and the state has done this consistently, not just in criminal justice recently, but in other areas. When the state is facing a budget issue, rather than, stop building a bullet train, they simply shift the cost to the local governments. And the local counties and the local cities are bearing the brunt of that.
And that's where the shell game comes into play, because you mentioned a minute ago that these propositions have the word safety in them, or public safety, and that's because the clever proposition summary writers know that they're more likely to get the votes if they put that word in there, because that's what people care about. And yet, if people really were informed that, you're telling me that the reason we have to move people out and let people out earlier than the criminal justice system said that they should be released, is because we're broke, because the federal government or the courts are saying you got to do this or I'm going to shut down the prison system. It just seems so dishonest. Michele, I have to say though, your comments about Governor Brown, this could cut down the chance of him appointing you to the bench in the next 48 hours before he leaves office.
I wasn't waiting by the phone.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll leave it at that then. Thank you for joining us, Michele. You have a great New Year's.
Always a pleasure. You too.
Thanks a lot.